two very uncomfortable words right in the title of this book. One is power and one is hobbyism, right? And so the idea of political hobbyism is supposed to hit all of us. And as you know, if you've read the book, I count myself among the recovering hobbyists here. So it's not an accusation about other people. It's something I've been struggling with for a long time myself. And you know, when I describe right in the introduction the political hobbyist, it's supposed to hit us all like, oh crap, is that me? Is that what my political engagement amounts to? Just kind of following news and being an amateur pundit and engaging cognitively, intellectually, knowing facts, but not really doing something in a power-seeking mode, which just means trying to get other people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. And all of us here, I'm sure, have done some real politics where you're trying to move a voter or move a politician, and how really different that experience is from how most of us, or really probably most of our friends and neighbors, engage in politics. So I started writing a book that was about political hobbyism. All of the data, in fact, I know you've read a few chapters so far. So you've read some chapters that are like stories of activists. And then you read other chapters that are like some more data-oriented stories about what most of us do in politics. And at first, the book was only that negative side. It was only, here's how most of us do politics, and how pathetic are we? And I have this wonderful undergraduate named Laurel, who had the very tough job of, I asked her as a research assistant, will you read my first drafts of this book? And she read the first drafts, which didn't have any of those stories of people like Angela in them. And she said, this is a bummer. You can't write a book like this. Like, it can't be this. You have to show people what the alternative is. And the truth is that set me on a path that I did not expect, which is that coming myself from the world of hobbyists, I didn't really quite understand what the alternative was. I had never really met people like Angela or Lisa or Drew before. Some of you, if you've read ahead, you might encounter my favorite character in the book, Knock, who you'll encounter in chapter, I think, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something like that. But when you'll find him, you'll learn about this very special person. And my whole world was opened up to special people all over around the country who both are doing something dramatically different than I was engaging in politics, but also like much more accessible, much more desirable than ever. If I have imagined in my head an activist, an organizer, I did not imagine 2 years ago someone who was like someone I just respect as much as I respect Angela. I never would have, I just didn't picture a person who carries in their work such dignity, who raises the level of conversation, who brings people along with them by extending kindness. I just didn't imagine politics in this way. And as you'll see later in the book, I tell you more in the book, my own story about how I change my own behavior. But in the meantime, I think you'll get, a rough sense of the story here. It's hobbyism. What is it? 2, why is it bad? Is it good? And part of it, you might be at a stage right now where you're thinking, please let there be some redeeming value in this. Maybe this political hobbyism is a gateway to me doing something useful. And so we'll try to engage with that question. And then a history question, like, where does this come from? Do we really do this kind of politics now more than we did it in the past? And then finally, as you'll see, as you already probably do see, a lot of the book is about the alternative. What are different models of ways that we can engage in politics productively? Why, in the end, we actually have a ton to learn from minority communities and immigrant communities about that form of real politics, of power-seeking politics. And anyway, I look forward to connecting with you later. I'm just so honored that you have me here and that you're reading my book, and I hope you like it. And please come back when I come back with questions. I'd love to hear what you think.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Eton. Sorry I mispronounced your name earlier. You should have corrected me.
Not the first time. Well, I'll
But
leave you all to your conversation, but thank you very much.
yes, thank you so much. And yeah, we're so excited that we'll have Eton coming back at September 28th, our last meetup for a Q&A series. So we're very thankful for that. So very cool to get to start off the book club with a little introduction from the author, the individual behind the work. And so before I get started, I'm going to put in the chat, you hopefully got it in the emails. This is oops, I sent it privately. 1 second. There we go. So that link in there, that is our discussion guide for this evening. So please take a look at that, because those are the questions we are going to be asking. And if you are a visual learner, it always helps to see the things that people are asking. And so before we get started tonight, you will see, I believe it's the last question, which comes from chapter 6. We're actually going to start off, because this was something I really kind of took from the book, and I thought we need to do this here at the book club. So the question is, why are you here tonight? What is your story? And so just looking for maybe 2 or 3 individuals to share their why to get us started. So you can raise that hand or just comment in the chat that you would like to chat. And I'll give you a little time. I am a teacher, by the way, so I am okay with silence. But I will start with my why. So why am I here is because I am hopefully in that process of recovering from political hobbyism, as Eton mentioned. And for me, I was never really involved in politics besides voting and talking about it and watching news and whatnot. And then I got very inspired by the Pete Buttigieg campaign in this primary cycle. And that's the first time I actually ever really did anything to bring change or bring the change I wanted to see into politics. And from there, now I'm running this grassroots book club. I volunteer for a candidate here running for state legislature in Omaha. And then I'm also serving as a block captain, was a state delegate for the Nebraska Democratic Party for our convention. And so, yeah, just learning more ways I can get involved to truly bring about change and whatnot. And I think this book is going to challenge me even more. And I look to be challenged by you all and inspired not only by what Eton writes about, but what you all have to share as we journey through this book. So that is my why. Now I want to hear from you. So please raise your hands or comment in the chat that you would like to talk. Gianna, you get to decide whose hand went up first, because they were quick. Tracy, it looks like
Tracy first.
Okay. I guess you could say I was a hobbyist not by choice. For my job, I was not allowed to participate in politics because I'm a reporter for a local newspaper. But I had been in counseling because of the whole 2016 thing. When I discovered Mayor Pete, I just had to get involved. And when he stepped out, I just kept being involved. And since it doesn't impinge on the local coverage of what I do, my boss said, fine, it's what you need to do. So I'm more active now.
Thank you for sharing and appreciate you stepping out and getting involved.
And then we have, next will be Jimmy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, what's up? My name is Jimmy. Well, I've been here before. I was around for the George Lakoff Book Club, and I am the reason I'm here is I think I look at the shirt I'm wearing. I'm actually wearing an Alexandria Ocasio shirt because I just finished canvassing to get people to do to register for the census and
nice.
register to vote here in Queens, where I live, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's district, where I helped her win the primary a few months ago. I felt very passionately like I was tired of being a hobbyist. I wanted to do whatever. So right now I'm in Sunnyside, Queens, in a busy street where all these people are eating. And, it's just a great community, and I've always been in love with it. So this is one of the reasons why I think a book like this is super cool.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jimmy. And if you all have not filled out your census, please get on it. You do not have much time. So let's see those census forms be turned in and encourage. Actually, I'm gonna put a challenge out. Go ahead.
Can I say something before you just say that? Because I'm kind of making this pitch to people all over this neighborhood, that a lot of which I've never been to. This is in Queens, but I'm sure this is relevant. Where I live is standing to lose two congressional seats because we are severely undercounted. Also, some of you may remember when we had a big peak here in New York, we were in the heart of it, this district, and we were in a hospital desert, partly because we don't have the right amount of numbers. And apparently for every person who fills out the census, at least here, New York City gets $6,226, literally, by filling it out. So we're trying to make this argument to people, but there's a lot of immigrants, some people here who are afraid of government things. Trump has scared them, and sometimes I have to reassure them that it's okay and whatnot. So yeah, like you were saying, filling out the census is something Trump does not want us to do, and voting as well. So I find what I'm doing here to be pretty important. And I'm trying to do it every day while I'm not that busy.
Thank you so much for your actions that are bringing about real change. And I dropped that census link there in the chat. So if you haven't had a chance to fill it out, please do so. Thank you so much, Jimmy. Good to see you again. And then we're going to go on to David.
Hi, I was here for the George Lakoff discussion, and it was really inspiring. And the choice of this book is so timely because I'm about to finish a documentary project that I've spent 10 years working on. And I started doing the research on what is my next project going to be. And it has to be something that involves political action and some meaningful change. And it's time to get off the hobbyist mode and do something really meaty. So the timing of this book just came at a perfect time in my creative process because I'm soon going to finish one project and start doing research for the next project. And this book just came at the perfect time. So Wes, thank you so much for doing this.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much. It's good to see you again as well. All right. Our last story tonight that we're going to hear from is Heather. Let's try one more time.
I thought I had not so much a story, just want to say hello. I didn't know that this had been going on. I just happened to see it when I was looking for something local, and it actually showed up as Cambridge, which is where I live. So I don't know whether someone here in Cambridge, I assume that was you, but not you. So I'm feeling very isolated, and I'm spending roughly 16 hours a day on Twitter. And it is not how I of course, will vote, and I'm giving a lot of money every day, more than I should be, but we need to be doing more. I need to be doing more, and I also want to feel engaged with other people. And there are a lot of things that come. I'm a lawyer, actually, very passionate about institutions and the Constitution, and there are a lot of things that come up that I'd love to talk to people about. So I've actually thought it'd be great to have a group like this to be able to discuss some of the things that are coming up and the scenarios that could unfold over the next number of months. So that's about it. I heard Aiton on Ezra Klein, I want to say.
That is I will definitely be sure to put that in the chat here and send it in the follow-up link. That's how I heard about Aiton. And so Heather, thank you so much. I actually just picked Cambridge because that's where he lives. And so, you know, always try to diversify where events pop up to draw in more people from different parts of our country. So thank you for joining us. Thank you everyone who shared their why. And you know, that was, it can be very vulnerable to share, particularly in a virtual setting where we don't know who's all on this call. We don't know each other's stories. And so that's really why I love that question, because the why, the stories, that is what matters. That is why we do what we do. That is why Jimmy is out there knocking on doors, getting people to fill out the census. That is why Tracy became inspired and felt belonged from a political candidate. That is what politics is about, is to bring power to the people and to bring about change. And we can only do that when we get to know one another. Aiton talks a lot about that in his book. And so I'm so thankful that all of you were willing to share your stories. And I hope to hear many of your stories as we continue to journey through this book. So let's get started. I believe question number one is from the introduction. And Vanessa is actually, well, real quick, if you all confirm that you're coming to the event, then I will be sending you an email on Sunday asking for you if you would like to start us off with a question. Really, all that means is you'll read the question and then you'll provide a brief answer to get the conversation started, because we need to hear from you all, not just me all the time. So please confirm for the upcoming weeks. And then if I send you an email, hopefully I'll get a response back so you all can be a part of this discussion and it's not so much me and Jana. So Vanessa, thank you so much for getting back to me, and lead us off with question one.
Yeah, you're welcome. So question one was, what stuck out to you as Aiton defines political hobbyism? The introduction of the book, I literally had to put my phone down because I do all my books on my phone. I literally had to put my phone down and went and had a hard cry, and then I came back and picked it up, because he was talking about how the KKK members in North Carolina were going out to help opiate addicts, while we Democrats say we care. We just kind of scroll by, and there is, as I'm learning, as I've been going through this journey of these last 3 years, there's a lot of truth in that statement. And yeah, but the other thing that stuck out for me is I saw a lot of myself in him defining political hobbyism. I saw a lot of my former self from before I got involved in politics, and then I saw a little bit of myself now, and I'm definitely going to be working on making some changes. That's for sure. But the whole KKK thing, like, really, it grabbed a hold of me, and I'm very excited to dive into the rest.
Thank you, Vanessa, for sharing your story and for getting us started here. So now we're going to just open up to the floor. Use that raise hand. So what stuck out to you as Aiton defined political hobbyism in that introduction? It looks like Andy has her hand raised. Is that true? Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure, why not? I didn't actually, but it's okay. No, it's
like
okay.
putting you on the spot.
Hi. um,
Thank you for volunteering.
it's okay. It's all right. You know me. I'm not shy. I am though, but I'm not. Um, well, anyway, for the folks who maybe don't know me, my name's Andy. I am in San Diego, as it says. I founded San Diego for Pete, which was a grassroots group, and then that was pretty much my like. If you go from being a political hobbyist to not, that was like jumping in the deep end for me without knowing how to swim, because I had no idea what I was doing. I started a Facebook group, and then all of a sudden it turned into this huge thing with, you know, over 500 people, and all of a sudden the campaign wants me to basically organize the entire 3.5 million person county. And I'm like, I don't have any lived experience. I don't have any job experience in this sort of thing. So it was a lot. And I spent a year doing that. And then after Pete left the campaign, you know, building bridges, and then, you know, I've had some family things go on, and some other things. So right now I feel like I'm back to hobbyist level, and I need to get back into it. But I feel like maybe we don't need to be so hard on ourselves, and maybe we do need to take times for ourselves. So anyway, that's me.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's good to have you. And I should preface, you may hear Pete come up. Building Bridges was a grassroots organization founded by Pete Buttigieg. I think I said that. But we are open to all Democrats, all progressives, regardless of who you chose to support in the 2020 primary. So, little disclaimer. All right, I think we're going to go to Jamel, then Christy, and then we'll move on to our next question.
So can you hear me? Okay. Yep. So Andy, you set me up, you know, for this, because the main reason I'm here is you Pete people who were part of the book club. I did the last book club, Untrumping America. And as a group, you were very inspiring. And Andy, you were not a hobbyist. You know, you got me through what you were doing to listen to your candidate in San Diego. And, you know, we're behind, you know, I'm in Virginia, my dad's in upstate New York, and we're supporting him. So don't consider yourself a hobbyist. And you know, as a group, I have mentioned this to my spouse and others. You know, there's this group of people who were for Pete Buttigieg who just really are a good group and committed. And I personally can't participate in partisan politics right now because I'm governed by the Hatch Act, and I take it very seriously. But you know but I can engage in nonpartisan activities like getting out the vote. I can push for a particular issue and things like that. But the main reason I'm here is because of the people who are participating. You just, that's it. Wes, you know, you've been doing a great job, but it's everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamel, and good to have you back. And thank you for supporting Amar Campo-Najjar running for U.S. congressional seat in California. All right, Christy.
Yeah, well, it was actually, I guess the first question, the question was, what struck you about the introduction and about hobbyism, I guess. So I think I would pretty much say about 90% of the people who volunteered for Pete actually were political hobbyists, and they were drawn to action. And I think this book is about what draws people to action, really is what is the driving force in this book and how do we inspire people. But I did want to mention, today for a lot of us, it's been a Zoom marathon. And this is our third Zoom for the day for a lot of us. So I'm getting a lot of melding of what is moving us, because I went from a fundraiser to a big organizer group reunion to see what people were doing. And then we're here to ask, how do we get people to actually volunteer? And I had a couple observations that actually go with the introduction. The introduction talks about how hobbyists are predominantly men, and it doesn't actually translate over to men volunteering, which is amazing because I see people here who actually are, like Jimmy is actually stepping up and volunteering. But it struck me that 60%, he's calling out 60% of the people who are male hobbyists do not volunteer, which I thought was interesting. And how do we move that? Because we keep on hearing this message, and you can actually see it in the Zoom rooms, that the future is women, the politics is in the future of women. And I'm like, well, where are the men? How do we get the men to get engaged? So that is the question, because I keep on seeing these organizations that are like, women are the movement. We're creating these things to get 1 million women to vote and to get women to step up and participate in the elected portion. And I will freely admit that men are predominantly our elected officials, but the people who are actually on the ground, knocking on doors, making those phone calls, it's now turned to majority women. So where are the men? And how do we get the men back into politics and taking personal responsibility for how our country is going? Because they seem to talk a lot, and they seem to think they know a lot, but they're not coming out and doing the work. So how do we get them to come out and do the work? So that's
very good. Very good. And yes, that is a challenge to any of us who identify as men here in this chat tonight. Let's move. So actually, question 2 is a reflection question, and I'm gonna throw in some reflection questions throughout our discussion and journey through this book, because I think reflection is real, and I hope that we can create a virtual community of respect and belonging and joy, where we can feel comfortable sharing our stories and where we're at and where we want to go, because I think that's what this book is all about. So let's just use a raise of hands visually, or actually we'll do plus, meh, or thumbs down. So a thumbs up would be like, no, I am truly taking real political action for real change. You know, I'm in somewhere in that journey, you know, to transition to that, or I'm still kind of stuck in political hobbyism. So real quick reflection. I'm a teacher, I told y'all. Where are you at on your journey? Give me some thumbs. All right. Thank you for participating. I do this all day as a teacher who teaches in a district that believes in protecting lives in our communities. So we are remote, so I get to do this often. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that personal reflection. Let's, does anyone want to help with question number 3? I'm going to put that link in the chat one more time in case you have not had a chance to open it up. Okay, I'll take it. Here we go. Question 3. So this comes from chapter 1. What stuck out to you as Etan described our need to refresh the feed? Jamel, I see you said I can do 3, so why don't you start us off?
All right. So, I mean, it's been a while since I read it, but I remember him, talking about the fact that people felt maybe unsettled if they weren't just constantly, getting the latest updates or something like that. And then it was with maybe his father or somebody who said, well, I just like it, and it's entertaining. I think I've admitted to this group in the past, when we have talked about the discomfort that some people feel with the different cable news channels. Sometimes I watch it because it is entertaining. And then sometimes it's just, I mean, let's put it this way. At the beginning, it was entertaining. Now it's just boring because, it's, you know exactly what everybody is going to, you know what the cable news people are going to say about everything on both sides. And it's just a little bit frustrating. I go there, because like in the case of the father, there's nothing else on that I'm particularly interested in. But I'm not holding a whole lot of stock in it. And the other thing is that I feel like if I'm going to watch one, I really do need to sprinkle it with some of the others as well, just to make sure that I'm hearing what other people are hearing. But you can get, it's addicting. I think that's what he's getting at. Is that people get hooked on it. And they don't realize that it's actually just for entertainment purposes as opposed to really anything related to civic duty.
Thank you so much, Jamel. Let's hear from one more person. Nessa?
So I have definitely created a political bubble, if you will, as far as news goes. Yeah, I'm like totally, I won't watch Fox and I won't watch MSNBC, even if Pete's on there. And I only turn the other news outlets on if there's a big story happening. Other than that, I will read my news. I will go to fox.com once a week because I do a lot of talking to Republicans. And so I want to know what the heck they're talking about when I'm talking about them. But I only do that once a week. As far as my social media, I only use two forms of social media. I use the Twitter and the Twitter. I sound like my grandma. I use Twitter and I use Snapchat. Twitter, I am very bubble. If I see you post anything anti-Pete, anti-Biden, like pro GOP, you're blocked, you're removed, you're gone. But over on Snapchat, it's like a whole other world because I do a lot of outreach over there trying to get people registered, register as poll voters, become Democrats. So I think I'm very select. I have multiple little bubbles, right? But it's not like a big giant, nothing's getting in bubble, you know?
Oh. Unmute. Okay, there I go. Thank you. Yeah, and the book talks, not only about media in terms of what we watch, but consumption and this lovely little thing that gives us access to so much. So it goes beyond just what does our bubble look like, and what does our feeds look like on social media as well. Our next question 4, this is that social media question. And on social media, it's liberals who prefer to be in ideological bubbles, unfriending people who convey political opinions they disagree with at higher rates than conservatives. Thank you, Vanessa, for being real and open and honest with us on that. And so have you created your own political bubble, social media wise and or news consumption? Let's just do a quick raise your hands. If you have created a little political bubble in social media or news consumption, raise those hands. All right, thank you for participating. And Karen's iPad has their hand raised. Karen, did you want to say anything by chance? Gina, can we unmute Karen's iPad? There we go, maybe. Karen, something may pop up on your screen at saying the host wants to unmute you. You have to accept our request. All right, I see Karen's hand went down, so not sure what happened, but we'll get back to Karen. All right, let's just move on to chapter 2. And Andy, it looks like Andy has volunteered for our chapter 2 questions. So Andy, start us off.
Well, I mean, I think they all kind of go together. So it's probably going to be just easiest to address them all at the same time. What stuck out to me as I read Lisa's story and learned about deep canvassing is that a lot of it is really similar to what we were taught when we learned relational organizing, and talking about our experiences and our values and as a way to connect with people rather than, you know, debating policy and going back and forth about, you know, who's going to be the best leader. It's more what we talk about when we talk about ourselves and how we how these things affect us personally. And I think it's much easier for people, even people on the other side of the political spectrum, to connect with that. And you know, that's something that really that stood out to me when I did read. I'll admit, I've like I said, I've had a rough few weeks, but so I hadn't got a chance to read it yet, but I did read that section. And you know, making that jump in, canvassing is hard if you've never done it before, but once you've done it once, it's so easy, and it's something that you'll want to do again. It's kind of like it's sort of like a drug, I guess. It's like I have canvassed a lot. Like I said, I was basically the regional organizing director for San Diego County for the Pete Buttigieg campaign. So not only did I canvass, I planned and hosted canvassing events. So I saw the other side of canvassing too. And we had a lot of people who were new to canvassing that once they did it once, they came back every single week, because it is very fulfilling to have conversations with people, real conversations with people face to face. And I think, you know, it is a big step for a lot of people, but it's also one that once they take that step, it's very easy to start running, because, you know, people face to face, it's really hard. You know, if you're telling your story and you are talking about your values, it's hard to argue with that, especially face to face. It's hard to argue with someone who's telling you that they value strength and belonging and joy and perseverance, because those are things that pretty much everyone values. So when you get out there and canvas, you can talk about that sort of thing. And if you've never canvassed before, I know this cycle is so weird because you might, the Biden campaign isn't going to canvass because of COVID. You might find some local politicians who are, but basically turn everything virtual if you can. You can virtually canvas. That's what I've told our, Amar's campaign to call phone banking, because phone banking, a lot of people are like, oh no, I don't want to talk on the phone. Virtual canvassing, that's what we're doing. We're talking to people. And then question 7, it's time to be very brave, she said. Share a political experience where you were brave or stretched yourself by getting outside of your comfort zone. For me, I was asked to introduce Pete on stage at the House of Blues in front of 1,000 people here in San Diego. And that was definitely a big, big step for me because like I said, I've never done anything like this before. And but for a lot of people, it is canvassing or making that first phone call or whatever. And just for reflection purposes, what's holding you back if you've never done it? Just think about it, because it is really worth it. And one other thing is, we did back in March and April, a Mars campaign actually did wellness check calls. And I don't know if anybody got a chance to do that with some of their local stuff or their Democratic clubs or whatever. But that was really eye-opening, because those calls were not like typical phone bank calls. Those calls, I didn't get a lot done. I didn't get through my list because the people who did answer wanted to talk and talk. I mean, I had 20-minute long conversations because they were lonely. So you never know what you're going to come across when you're canvassing. And it's very rewarding. And it doesn't even have to be that deep canvassing that you talked about in the book. Just get out there and talk to people. So anyway.
Thank you, Andy, for sharing your experiences. I believe David, and if you could try using the chat to let us know if you would like to talk, or otherwise, I see a few people have used that raise hand feature. So we're going to go to David, and then next, I believe, will be Tracy. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I thought what Vanessa was saying was very, very wise. This summer, I've needed to focus on my creative work, and the news was getting me so angry. But I didn't want to feel disconnected. So what do? So I just basically cut off all moving image news, all of it. And I only read, right? So, and yes, I'm in a bubble, because if I read anything outside of my bubble, my blood's going to boil. So I just limited my reading to The Nation and The Atlantic. And The Atlantic has been writing some amazing cover stories this summer. So I feel like I'm somewhat connected, and I'll get back into it in the fall, but I just needed to focus. But I also needed to step away because I was so angry at the beginning of the summer, due to many reasons. But what's interesting is I'd never canvassed in my life before, and then I started canvassing for the Elizabeth Warren campaign. And that was sort of the beginning of the wake-up call, and that sort of led me to this. So I'm sort of, I'm slowly crawling out of hobbyism. But I really appreciate what Vanessa was saying, about reading the news instead of watching the news. That really resonated.
Thank you, David. And real quick, what was like, what your experience, just real quick, talk about how canvassing went and the highs or the lows.
For me, it was pretty amazing because, I ran across a lot of the usual suspects. This was in New Hampshire, which has a fascinating mix of, excuse the phrase, crunchy liberals and very concerned conservatives. So there were people who basically said, "I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. We're not going to talk." I go, "That's fine." We were very, very polite. But I also had some really great conversations with people who are concerned, because in New Hampshire, people are really used to politicians, showing up at diners and town halls and people getting really, really close to the candidates. So there's this level of engagement that was really fascinating. And I talked to a lot of really engaged people who talked about the issues. And I even, got a few people to volunteer for Elizabeth Warren. But the best canvassing moment, I'll be quick. We went to this house, and I was working with 2 other people, and we were going to houses individually, so we would spread out and come together. But then we saw a house that had a Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders sign out front. 3 signs. So we go, oh, we have to go to this house together because we want to hear this story. And it was a mixed household, and it was a fascinating conversation because, you know, we were talking to one person, but they were also talking about the 2 other views, and it was really fun. I don't think you would find that in a lot of parts of the United States where a single household has multiple lawn signs. So it really did wake me up to the value of those person-to-person conversations. And the arrival of COVID was kind of devastating for that kind of canvassing. So yeah, I have to figure out how to do the virtual stuff. So thank you for the inspiration.
Awesome. And I know I actually just read an article on CNN this morning about Bernie Sanders and how he was lamenting about how he just wants to get out there and hold rallies and canvass, because I know that was a big part of his campaign as well. So thank you, David. Jana, I think you know what we're doing.
Yep, Tracy's next, and then Teresa.
I kind of had a backwards experience with canvassing. I'm such an introvert. I could have founded Introverts for Pete. New Hampshire, I was very nervous when I got down to Massachusetts, where ironically people just don't care about opening their door to canvass. I did have the last weekend of the Super Tuesday primary. I had a really good conversation with a couple of union laborers who were just trying to figure out who they're going to vote for because they really weren't happy with Warren, with some of the things she was involved with, some natural gas thing off the coast, didn't matter. But I just had this really long, interesting conversation, and they were willing to consider my candidate. And I was really surprised because I thought his gender identity would be a turnout for them. And I said, I don't care who he loves, we just want someone to do the job. And I was really enthused by that. I've often driven by that neighborhood thinking, once the COVID scare is over, I should go back and thank them for giving me the time of day, because no one else gave me 2 minutes. They either say they'll take the literature and shut the door in your face, or they pretend they're not home. They're the only person that gave me more than 5 minutes that whole weekend. It was a good note to end on, a crappy weekend to end on. So it was weird. Wes is muted again. There you go.
Sorry, I forgot, Jana, you're doing this, so.
I didn't mute you.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, no, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how really kind of like getting out of your comfort zone is very scary. And especially I live in New York City, and I will say kind of not necessarily canvassing here, but when I remember when I was out trying to get signatures in New York City, where people do not stop. They don't want to stop. They don't want to listen to what you have to say. They just kind of want to get to where they need to go. And getting out of my comfort zone and out of my bubble of people that I knew to kind of say, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask people on the sidewalk of New York City to sign a petition to just get somebody on the ballot, not to vote for them, just to get them on the ballot, was really, really interesting. And I think the thing that I found really, and I struggled with, was finding out how me having one candidate that I liked really kind of alienated me from a lot of people that I knew that I thought would be really impressed by it. And yet they really kind of turned out to be like very, very much a swing, and was aggressive in ways that I didn't expect. To the point where some of my friends were actually, when I was asking around my bubble to just, hey, sign the petition, people who I thought were really progressive were just kind of like, no, I'm not going to sign yours. And oh, by the way, telling other people around me not to sign it either was really eye-opening. And yet the most heartbreaking and heartwarming part of it was when I was out on the streets of New York City asking people to sign, especially because I was asking them to sign for Pete, how many people who were older automatically would come up to me and sign right away. but people who were younger just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I think that that was a really interesting dynamic to kind of come up in ways that I didn't expect. Especially because if I was asking people to sign in the Broadway district, the older especially would have with sign. They knew what I was doing, and they had done it before. They knew how to fill out the forms. You didn't even have to ask them twice. But anybody who was younger just didn't want to have anything to do with it. But anybody who was older, it was really surprising, actually. But it also was like completely outside of my comfort zone. But I did it.
That's awesome. So now we have Jimmy has some responses. So I will unmute you.
Hey, how are you? Now I'm walking home. I'm in some weird street here in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I've had some interesting experiences going back to high school, trying to get my high school budget passed, learning about the actual town I live in. And I feel like sometimes when you are canvassing, you are giving other people the chance to have that political conversation that they wish they could have. Like they've been isolated in their own way. A lot of people, sometimes they get annoying, like they want to tell you their thing that's been bothering them forever, either about your candidate or how much they love them, but it gives them a memory of that. I mean, I know someone was just saying how important storytelling is. And not only do you get to tell the story of your candidate, but you get to let them tell a story a little bit, and then they feel heard. Even if nothing really happens, they feel heard. They feel like your candidate somehow gave them the opportunity to feel heard a little bit. And you as a representative of that candidate have done that. And one other thing I want to say is that, I kind of said it in the chat, but obviously, like, let's say me walking around with AOC shirt, for example, I increase her visibility. I make her look like a much more confident candidate, even though she already kind of is. And, and when I talk to people and I just confidently either listen to them or boost what she says, that it's like just a net gain. It's a total net gain. And even the people yesterday who were telling me that, I'm going to hell and everything, like I just quietly listened to them and told them I have transcendent values as well. And they actually calmed down, and they actually were very friendly with me after. Sometimes you could go from a -1 to a 0, and that is a good change. Absolutely. And then you go from a 0 to a +1 or a 1 to a 2. But there are people in the negative zone. You can move them up a little bit too. It's that you don't have to win their vote so much. You could just have them be less malicious about what you're into, which is a huge change. So that's what I found. And I've been doing this on and off for years. I did Obama campaigning back in 2008, down in Florida and Philadelphia. I'm not afraid to go up to doors anymore. I kind of enjoy it. And, you'll hear crazy shit. Like back in 2008, I heard somebody say, I think Biden should be president and Sarah Palin should be the vice president. Like super weird things people come up with. They've got their own theories, they've got their own ideas, but they get to say them. And then you get a really good on the ground insight into where people's heads are at. And you could probably feel pretty good about yourself sometimes that you might be more well-adjusted than you imagine, even if you were feeling a little anxious about doing this before. So I don't know. A lot of us stay inside, especially these days, because we don't have to be outside, especially in COVID. But I think it's an amazing opportunity if you can knock on doors, talk to people, and hear their ideas, even if they're kind of, out of left field or kind of totally misguided. You have a much better opportunity to have an influence on them face to face than you do yelling at them on the computer. So that's my response to some of this. Thank you.
Great way to end that discussion on canvassing. And yes, telling a story is so important, but getting to listen to a story is just as important, and if not more, if we truly want to change perspectives and see people understand why we believe in progressive ideas and values. So We're going to move on to chapter 3 because we got 15 minutes left. I like to end on time because we all have many things that we are a part of. So chapter 3, it says, Americans have started to treat political parties as they treat sports teams. We focus on the team identity rather than in the underlying reasons for why I or we choose that team in the first place. So the question is, why did you choose to be on the Democratic Progressive team? And before I get that, one thing I loved about this book is I love sports. I miss sports. And so this sports analogy on politics really was a great analogy that Eitan used for me. So yeah, so why do you choose democratic values, progressive values?
Vanessa?
Thanks, Teresa, for putting some things in the chat.
So I am a former Republican. And I have only become a Democrat in the last few years. And I had a very big decision to make in 2015. And I went with Hillary. And that is when I became a Democrat. And it was purely out of fear that I became a Democrat. And because I'm not a healthy person, I have a lot of pre-existing conditions. And I was freaking out over him. Even though the ACA changed my life, it still wasn't enough to convince me to switch parties, but Donald Trump was. And that's when I started getting on board, and I realized that all of these years, aside from the abortion issue, I was very left leaning, and I never really realized that. I just, I was a Republican because I was raised a Republican. So yeah, it was Donald Trump. And then when he was elected, and 3 weeks later, my husband and I had that big tragedy. It was like, oh my God, these Republican policies are what contributed to my daughter no longer being here. So it kind of solidified our decision to become Democrats. Many, many, many reasons, but mostly fear.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you. I know Teresa and Liz, you put some comments there in the chat, so thank you for choosing to dialogue that way. Would anyone like to? I'd love to hear from someone who's been a progressive for their whole life, and why do you stay on the progressive team?
Andy?
So I put in chat, I was born and raised, I was raised by former hippies. I had to travel back home for a funeral, and my mom decided to tell about the time she was tear gassed on campus at the University of Maryland when they were protesting something, I don't know what. So, and that's not a story I'd ever heard before, but I knew that they were very active when they were younger, and they've always been Democrats. I grew up in a university town. It's a little tiny blue dot in the sea of red farm country in Ohio. And I stay that way because my parents have always been that way, and my brother and sister are progressive. And it's something that we never shied away from talking about politics or discussing the state of the world. When I was still at home, on a group chat with my whole family. We do have some Trump supporting cousins. So we've been talking about how to navigate that. And, just why I choose to stay is because I don't really see any other choice. It's not, I'm big on social issues and the climate and things like that. Economic issues are not something that really speak to me. And even if they did, I would still probably choose the more liberal side. And it's just, I don't know. I can't ever see myself in the mindset of a Republican, and I never have. Like, I was the kid walking around my elementary school saying, we're voting for Mondale. I'm old. So, and like when everyone was voting for Reagan, I'm like, we're voting for Mondale. And, I was, our little mock election or whatever. And that was me. And that's how I've always been. So it's really hard to imagine choosing the other team.
Thank you, Andy. And I know Dr. Lacosse's work has been mentioned before. If you have not had a chance to read it, it gives you a great insight as to why you might be on one team versus the other. And it's all about how we were raised. So it's a very good book, also very good on how to correctly frame issues so that we can see political causes actually win. So it looks like a lot of you have put things in the chat, so that's great. I'm going to move on to the next question for chapter 4. In chapter 4, we got to hear Drew Cromer's story of creating Precinct 206 there in Davidson, North Carolina. He went to college there. You may only know it if you watch March Madness when Stephen Curry, if you don't know who he is, he's a pretty big NBA All-Star now, who has endorsed Biden and is advocating for Biden and Kamala. So that's cool. But yeah, anyway, very cool story of truly taking political power and bringing it to the community and the party structure within his community. And so let's just put this in the chat. And you can honestly answer yes or no. Do you see your local political party as effective or political hobbyism? So put effective or political hobbyism in the chat on how you see your local political party. Or if you have no idea, then just put no idea. Thanks for Teresa for getting us started. So barely effective hobbyism, I think. Good to hear, Kristen, that your county is effective. Some so-sos in there. Yeah, it depends on where you live. Some closeness, unsures, spin their own wheels. I like that little talk. So yeah, so well, I am gonna just let you know, there are gonna be some action steps that I'm going to include with our follow-up email. And one of them is going to be get engaged with your political party locally. Yes, I know they are political hobbyists. They could be closed off. But our very first book we read was by Amanda Littman, who co-founded Run for Something, which is an amazing progressive organization that recruits and provides tools to young progressives, diverse progressives across our country who are running for a political office. And if you know the stories of a lot of individuals that we know very well on the Democratic side, they got started locally. And that's where it gets started. And so that's where we can bring about real change to our communities. And we heard about that through Drew, how he was able to truly take power, put it into this Precinct 206, and really make a difference, not only politically, but racially, bridging that racial divide within his community. So there is power in politics because politics is personal. And so I want you to get involved because, as Amanda wrote, the only way you can change your political party locally and state-wise is by getting involved. If you don't get involved and wield that power and turn it into true change, it will never happen. So there are change agents, 20 of you right now in this room, who can truly bring power to your local political party. Chapter 5. Jana, do you want to read that question?
Oh, number 10.
Yep.
Okay. Nelson Polsby wrote about the need for party leaders to give input in a primary along with voters. Your thoughts? I didn't get that far.
That's okay. Well, essentially, I did not know this, that in 1972, that is when voters decided who won a primary versus a more, that decision left up to party leaders. I had no idea it was relatively recent, that change. So, you know, Nelson kind of advocates the need for party leaders to be part of that decision, because otherwise, a primary isn't, whoever wins the primary is not a true reflection of the people. And so, yeah, so what do y'all think? Agree, disagree? Or Jana, what are your thoughts based on what I just said?
I don't know.
Whether that's a hard one.
If party leaders should be able to give input in a primary, I mean, I don't know. I guess I probably need more, like an example. Give me an example, Wes. So like, what would that?
I don't really know, because he kind of, yeah, like kind of didn't go too deep into it, but it looks like Christy is raising her hand.
Oh. Well, let's get Christy, for heaven's sakes. Okay. Speak up.
Oh, sure. I will save you. So I think what he's talking about is in the past, before we had the riot, basically in the 60s, the party leaders decided who was going to be the candidates. They were the gatekeepers. They decided, the political machine decided who rose up. So when when Bernie says the machine kept him from doing whatever, maybe. But the thing is, the machine is like this compared to what it was, because they defunded the DNC, and the DNC decided who was going to run because they controlled the purse. And Bernie broke the mold. He broke that because he got the money from the grassroots, and the power is the purse. And Bernie actually changed it and said that the DNC doesn't have the power, that the people do. So whatever Bernie's future is or anything like that, he changed politics. He changed modern politics in the money. And I think his lasting legacy will actually be how our party and politics runs. Not, even though he moved the Overton window on the healthcare policy, I think that's ephemeral. What he actually changed was how we decide who rises up, because the party would have shut down Bernie. Party probably would have shut down Pete, but they couldn't, because they can control the money. Because really good candidates had to leave because they didn't have money. Kamala had to leave because she didn't have any money. And that is where they used to have the control. I mean, in 2016, all they could do was change the written rules, which people saw. So if they read it, they would have known, and they controlled the timing of debates, but they couldn't stop people from entering the races. And that's what they used to be able to do, was actually control who actually was seen by the public. And once you have social media and you can't control the money, the gate is open. And so I have to thank Bernie for that. He is not my politician. I do not agree with most of what he has to say, but he opened it up to the people. And that is revolutionary right And that is what he's talking about, is bringing back gatekeepers in some way through the mechanisms. And whether you agree with it or not, do you believe that a handful of power brokers who are rising up the ranks know better than the people? That is really what the founding fathers had to decide. That's why they had the Senate and the House of Representatives, because they thought the Senate would be, the dam to stop the populace from overrunning the country. And that's essentially what he's suggesting, is perhaps the party leaders could decide who is actually a Democrat. And right now, the gate is open. Anyone can be a Democrat if they want to be. And then the people decide if they're worthy.
And anyone can be a Republican and become president, right?
So true. So I think they have more
Sorry,
control
I had to
over
throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, they can control, but I think they have more control over who they run. So maybe not, because QAnon is just like going to overtake their party. So
Yeah. Well, thank you, Christy, for adding that. And I really enjoyed listening to what you had to share about Bernie, and how Bernie revolutionized that through that grassroots energy and grassroots strength, and how that can truly make a difference. And even if Bernie is not our candidate, we can still see how that grassroots energy and strength is making a difference in our party's platform, and how Joe Biden, how many have said, has moved to a more progressive stance on issues, and it's power to the people. I think that was his walk-up song, power to the people. So, well, it is 8:48, so we're at our hour and 15-minute mark, and we got through all the questions. And so I just want to real quick share a few things with you all. So hopefully you can see my screen here. Can someone give me a thumbs up if you can? Thank you. So building bridges, we are more than just a virtual book club. How can you get involved? If you are very passionate about seeing a Biden-Harris White House and the many things that can bring to our country, we have an organization that is focused on grassroots organizing for the Biden-Harris campaign. We also, Kaz is here tonight on our call. She leads a relational organizing training, because that is truly what we feel is bringing belonging and personal power back to politics and whatnot. We believe in that, and we've seen that as individuals part of the peak campaign. So take a look at that training, go to it if you can on Wednesday nights. We have a grassroots discussion series that Kaz also leads. There's a lot of disinformation that was spewed last week. There's a lot that's being spewed about COVID this week. It happens all the time. So how do we deal with it? That's what the grassroots discussion series is going to be about. We also have a Friday happy hour, which is just a real chill time to talk politics and how to talk politics. Kaz leads that well. Kaz, do you have a job? Like, what do you do besides trainings for politics? And then some other ways to take some true concrete action to support local Democrats and progressives, and also get out the vote to our military and overseas voters. We have something on Tuesday night, movie night and postcard writing. We have a dance party and letter writing on Friday night. On Saturday mornings, we have just a little chill hangout to save democracy. And then on Sundays, we have our day of action where we support local Democrats and do that military overseas outreach. So many ways to get involved right here through Building Bridges. Also, I know we said refresh that feed, but please give us a follow on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on Pinterest too. And we'll be putting like this talk on our YouTube channel, so you can share that with others. And hopefully someone's putting this link in the chat before we go, but our website is buildingbridgesforamerica.com or .org. And so please go there, learn more about us. you can go to our events and it pulls the calendar up. You click on it, you can go to our Mobilize signups to get involved in any and all that I just shared. I know it's a lot, but hey, we have work to do to ensure that progressive campaigns and causes are victorious, not only on November 3rd, 2020, but the next year and the year after that, because grassroots organizing cannot stop. It will not stop because our democracy depends on it. So thank you all so much. Truly appreciate it. I hope to see all of you back next week. And I hope to announce that we'll have a special guest here in the next few days, probably someone you've already read about. And tell a friend. It doesn't matter if they didn't join us tonight or they don't have the book, or if you weren't able to read. There's many who will fall in that category tonight, including my co-host Jana. So you're more than welcome. So please spread that word. We'd love to hear more people's stories and get more people involved. So thank you all so much. Have a great night, and we hope to see you all next week on Monday.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.